Do you recognize this stuff? Do you recognize this stuff? This is what we used to use to make graphs in the old days. It's called graph paper. A graph was made on graph paper. Now we make graphs with the computer. Very different, but it's the same idea. It's just as easy because once you get things set up and get the information in there, it's very easy to make a graph from it. Just like it used to be, once you got the two different axes set up on your graph, it was very easy to make the bars. So here's a little bit about graphing. You know this part. Put your topic and your date. Be ready to highlight your vocab words. Write down some main ideas and concepts. You understand the idea of slide decks now. You've been learning from them for a while. And so I'm going to be going through them sometimes a little faster on some of the directions. I'll be a little bit less on the directions and a little bit heavier on the content, on what you need to know that's on the slide deck. Charts versus graphs. Very, very important. And one of the reasons why this is so important is Google doesn't even know the difference between a chart and a graph. Google calls what we call graphs charts, and they call what we call charts tables. So on the left side of your screen here, with rows and columns and numbers, that is what you would call a Google Sheet. The sheet is a table, or what we're going to call a chart, because it shows information in chart form. The information here is not important, just the fact that there's titles at the top, there's labels along the side, and there's numbers in here that we could turn into a graph. Over here we have what we call graphs. Pie graphs, also known as circle graphs, bar graphs, and line graphs, and they each have their own different purposes. A pie graph will show the percent of a whole. A bar graph shows how things are compared to each other, and line graphs show how things change over time. When I grade your graphs, they will be graded on this rubric. 20 points each. 5 points for the title. Please make sure it is a good one. If the graph is a graph about the people in third block class and their eating habits for lunch today, please make sure that you include that they are third block, that you're talking about their eating habits, and that it's for lunch today, not just for some random day or every day for lunch. Be very specific in your title. Labels are 2 points each. So you have a label on your x-axis and on your y-axis. Both axes will have a label. Usually the label that's running on what we were going to call the vertical axis, up and down, is something to do with the numbers, and the label that's on the horizontal axis, it's sleepy, horizontal, so it's laying down. That usually has to do with the things that you are graphing, whether it's mountains, whether it's animals, whether it's days of the week. And then make sure that both of those also have even spacing. I will tell you, even spacing should be very easy on a computerized graph. The numbers on the line should also be very easy on a computerized graph. You want the numbers on the lines, not above them or below them, but right on it, so that it's very clear which number you're talking about. And finally, once you get everything set up, the data is only worth 5 points. So, one thing that you can see over on the far right-hand side that I failed to mention when we were talking about the title was the fact that there's a word you will never find in your title, and that is the word graph. Please do not ever, never do that. If you do that, you are insulting your viewer, and you're telling them that they don't know what a graph is. And I would not do that if I were you. Now, if you're referring to a particular graph that was for an assignment, you might say, Mr. Yoder, I'm not quite finished with my tree graph. But your tree graph on the page would not be called tree graph. It would be called the 10 tallest trees in North America. Understand? Good. So here's a sample graph. Move myself out of the way. Whoa, okay. Here we are. Haven't quite figured out this moving thing. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. You can see in red, I've got a title. The blue are the labels. They tell what those words or numbers mean. The numbers are evenly spaced. The bars are evenly spaced. I have a label under each bar that tells what the bar is going to be about. That bottom line is always going to be 0. And then from there, you count upward and even numbers. So you can count by 1s, you can count by 2s, you can count by 4s, you can count by pi if you want to. 3.14, 6.28, 7, 8, 9.42. Okay, so you get the idea. You can count by whatever number you want to as long as it's the same all the way up your graph. So this is what a graph is going to look like. This page gets into some details about making a graph. And I'm going to let you go ahead and give this a try on your own. But just so you understand, these are the directions over here. Here is a sample of what it could look like. Here is a sample of what your graph should look like with the title, with the labels, with the numbers, with the bars, and everything that's there. Remember, write down a few questions, like a quiz for graphing. And then if you still have questions about how to make or don't understand something about a graph, please write it down here at the bottom, or write something to the effect of, I understood everything today, or about graphs. Thank you for watching, and I hope that your day continues to get better now that you're done learning about graphs.